Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to make some more progress on the SRX600. The big news this time round is that we've got the frame back from the powder coating, and we've also got the tank and the plastics back, which I'll show you when we go indoors in a minute. They're indoors out of the way so they don't get damaged while we're rebuilding the rest. However, all is not good news. The frame, although the colour is very good, I'll show you some close-ups in a minute, there is a problem which I wasn't very happy about. I'll show you what that is in a second. So as far as the colour goes, I'm pretty pleased with that. It's very close to the factory Titanic Grey, Yamaha Titanic Grey it's called. And the actual powder coating itself has been done very well. They've managed to blank off most of the holes, etc. So I shouldn't be having to run a tap through those to clear the threads out before it all goes back together. So that's all good. However, what isn't so good is this. So as you can see, they've obviously shot blasted the frame prior to powder coating, which is fine, but they've managed to shot blast the ball race bearing, which I'm not very pleased about, because I wasn't going to change these. I didn't need changing, they looked okay, but obviously now this is so rough, I'm going to have to change these. So it's not the end of the world. I suppose I could argue, or you could argue, that I should have taken them out before I sent it off, but I did tell them I was reusing them and could they please mask them off, and clearly that's not been done. However, that's not the worst of the problems. The obviously this problem is, we can overcome this by knocking these out and putting new bearings in. In fact, I've got those on order already. However, the bigger problem is down here. This plate here, hopefully you can see that, this riveted on plate, was the VIN plate. So this had all the information on it about the bike, manufacturer, model, year, all of that sort of information. And they've basically powder coated over the whole thing. To say I was livid was an understatement. They did give me a large discount on the cost of the powder coating because of this, but the problem I've got now is I think this is unrecoverable. I mean, I am going to try, well, in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the rivets out, take the plate off, and then hopefully remove the powder coating with something, I'm not sure what with. I might try acetone, soak it in acetone, and then see what we've got after that. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that they didn't mask it off when they shot blasted it either. So the chances are any information that was on the plate has been shot blasted off and then they powder coated over. If that's the case, I do have quite a good photograph of this plate before I sent the frame away, and I'm hoping that maybe a printer can reproduce it on like a sort of metallic foil, so at least I can put that on there as a sticker just to replicate what was there. But yeah, I absolutely to say I lost my temper with them was let's call it a mild understatement, to say the least. Anyway, moving on, let's look at some other bits. I think in the last video we were looking at the wheels, masking those off and finishing off the discs. That's now all been done and it's all back together. So these are our re-zinced bolts. I've sprayed the inner part of the disc black, so as exactly as it was before. The discs I think I mentioned were put in the blast cabinet just to take the glaze off of those. I have gone ahead and repainted the wheels in the correct colour, which is Yamaha Titanic Grey. It's a sort of very dark greeny grey. It's a difficult colour to describe. It looks different in different lights, but that's all done, and I have polished the rims as well. Again, with this, I want it to look like factory. I don't want it necessarily to be any better than factory, so these have had a reasonable light finish, and it's a sort of satin finish as opposed to a mirror finish on these, which I'm quite pleased about. So yeah, that one's all done, and the rear wheel is done as well. I've got to put the sprocket back on this yet, and also on the other side I've yet to put the disc etc on, so that'll be the next job. I've just realised I've left half the masking tape on this, so that one needs to come off. Let's get rid of some of that. Probably easier said than done now that it's been on here for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Once you get your finger in under an edge, it's not so bad. This masking tape I used wasn't quite wide enough to cover these small edges, so I had to put it on twice. I had to put two rows of it on for most of it. And that's coming off not so bad. There we go. That's coming off okay. There's something very therapeutic about peeling masking tape off after you've finished the spraying. It might be fiddly, but you do get a great sense of achievement once you've taken it all off and you're left with the finish that you wanted. There we go. So on that side, I think so. Yep, let's move around to the other side and do that side. Find an edge to pick off. It's easier said than done. There we go. Let's go with that one. Oh. I ran out of that plastic type tape, and the replacement that I bought is a more sort of paper based rather than plastic based, which doesn't quite go around corners the same way as the plastic one does. It works, but it's just a bit more fiddly to get on. But, so I had to use more smaller pieces really, just to go around the corners, which just makes it trickier to get off afterwards. It's alright, it's coming off. So with all these things, as you do these restorations, there's no rush. It's not going to be back on the road for any particular time. It's not like it's a daily ride or anything like that, so I've got to get it done in a certain time frame. I think if you rush these things, the enjoyment goes out of it. It's meant to be an enjoyable hobby after all. So just aim to get little bits and pieces done whenever you can. And if you're getting frustrated doing something or something's not working, just walk away, close the door, close the workshop door, go and do something else, come back later and you're in a better frame of mind. there we go. Just some little bits of residue left over I just need to sort out, but basically that is our rear wheel done, and I've already polished the rims. I think I mentioned that I was going to polish the rims before I painted, because I was worried that if I start polishing the rims after I've painted, I'm going to get some of the polish and the compound on these. And as I said, they're not rough, but they are textured. And if I get compound on these or in these, it's going to be really difficult to get off, and it's going to be really obvious. So that's that sorted. So next thing to do on this is disc back on, and then round the other side we can get the sprocket back on as well. So that's next job. So next we need to put the sprocket back onto the carrier. This is the original sprocket off the bike, 37 tooth, I think it says on there. Don't you see that? Yep, 37 tooth. So this this sprocket was, well, like any sprocket that comes off an old bike, it was obviously covered in grease and muck, etc. So I have actually zinc plated this. I don't know whether they would have been zinc plated, but it's come out okay. There's some marks and bits and pieces on it that didn't quite come off, and there's some lines where it's been through the process twice, but just based on the fact that I actually haven't got a big enough tank to submerge it, so I had to do it in 2 steps. But it certainly looks better than it did originally, and I'll offer it some protection in the meantime. So let's fit that back on the carrier. And according to the workshop manual, there's no Loctite. These are just bolted on with a bolt and a nut, and it doesn't talk about putting any kind of thread lock on these whatsoever. There certainly wasn't any when I took them off on these. These nuts, they're a bit like nylock nuts. There are inserts into these to make sure they don't come undone. So we'll follow the workshop manual. So it's always best, if you can, to get hold of a workshop manual as opposed to a Haynes or a Climber manual or any other manual. In my experience, there's nothing wrong with, certainly nothing wrong with Climber manuals. I think they're probably generally better than the Haynes equivalent, depending on who's written the Haynes manual, but I really don't think you can beat the original factory manual if you can get hold of a copy. Of course, they're not, you can't always get them. Some people do reprint some of them, particularly for some more popular bikes. I was lucky enough to, actually when I bought this bike, the chap I bought it off, I don't know where he got it, but he got the original workshop manual. So that came with the bike, so I didn't have to go and source one, which is certainly very helpful. And of course it gives you all the torque figures and all the rest of it. These are meant to be torqued to 20 Newton meters, so we'll do that in a second. We'll just get them all tightened up first, and then we'll torque them down afterwards. Get the gun going in the right direction. And that is the wrong size. Maybe it's a 5. Yeah, okay. Go with the right size bit, always helps. Do that. It's a very tight fit in there. One more. Okay, and now we'll get the torque wrench out and just check those. This little torque wrench I bought to, it's actually for push bikes really, well that's what it was sold as. Only goes up to 22 Newton meters, and then I've got a bigger one for the larger stuff, but this works absolutely fine for these sorts of things. So I've set it to 20 Newton meters. Check those. Could do with finding some way of holding that. So I might have to clamp that in the vise. Okay, so I've just about managed to do that now. So I've gone around and checked them all. I'll hold that and do it. There we go. Come back and do that one. That one was loose. So I don't think it is loose. I think it's just, I think the Allen, the bolt's spinning as well, I think. That's all right. I'll get a wrench on that one. I'll just, we'll sort that one in a second. That'll be done as well. I'm just running these through a dye just to clean the threads up, because I think when I zinc plated these there must be some contamination in the tank, and the threads have got like little bits of, well, they've just gone quite rough, which just looks a bit odd, but I think I'll just run through, because I want to make sure when these are torqued up properly that we're where we should be. So I'm just going to run these through. I'm not changing anything on the thread as such, I'm just cleaning the threads up. So we'll go through all of these, get these done, and then we'll come back. Right, so I've tried putting the screws into these holes, or bolts I should say, into these holes, and I'm not happy, to be honest. They're really, really tight, and I think that's a combination of when I've painted the wheel, I didn't cover these up, so these have basically got paint inside them on the threads. So there'll be two coats of undercoat, there'll be 2 coats of top coat, and there's 2 coats of lacquer all got on there, and I think that hasn't helped. The other issue is these bolts. Like when I zinc plated them, I think basically what's happened is the zinc plating is too thick, and again it's closed up the threads. So I've just run a dye down all of these just to clean these up, and I'm just now going to run a tap. M8 these are, so I'm going to run an M8 tap down each of these just to clear the threads out, and then hopefully these will go in easier. Because this is the disc and it has to be torqued down to the right tightness, I don't want to feel that I'm getting the right torque setting, but in actual fact I'm not, because these are just really tight in the threads. So I want to make sure these run nice and easily through the threads, and then I know when I do them up with the torque wrench I'm getting the right torque. So let's run this tap through this lot. Okay, so that's those all cleaned out. I'm just going to blow those out with the airline. And now we've done that, our screws should go in nice and easily. Yeah, I can turn those in by hand now. Before I couldn't hardly even get them started. So that's good, because we know that when we put our thread lock on, that was the other thing, I think these threads inside here still had remnants of thread lock, which wasn't helping either. So I'm happy with that. So we'll now go ahead and put thread lock on and get this disc on. So we're going to be using standard Loctite 243 thread locker on these, medium strength, and that basically means that you can undo it without applying any heat, just with normal tools, but it won't, the bolt won't come undone. It's important when you're buying this to make sure that it's genuine, because a lot of these sorts of products are manufactured in China and they look identical, but they probably almost certainly don't do the right job. So I would always make sure that you buy this sort of thing from a reputable supplier, and that they know where they're getting it from, so they know they've got the right stuff. So let's go ahead and sort this out. So here's our disc. Can go in orientation, as long as obviously we've got the black side up. Now you don't need huge amounts of this, you really only need a small amount on your bolt, and then as that works in, it'll go up and down the thread. What tends to happen is people put tons and tons of this on, and when you come to undo it, you can't get them undone. Then you end up stripping the top out, the top off the bolts, and then of course you're in a whole world of pain at that point. So it doesn't need a lot, just a little bit, just like that. That's all it needs. Put the lid back on that. You've got a few minutes to work with this stuff, you don't have to rush. And then all of these should nice and easily just do up. The manual doesn't say anything about doing these in any kind of order, but I like to do just opposite each other, and we'll do the same when it comes to torquing these up as well, which we'll do after this. And that one, yeah, they're going in nice and easily now. little bit of resistance, but nothing much, which is good, because that means when we come to torque them down, we know that they should be correct. Okay, so torque wrench next, and what have we done with that? Make sure we've got the right bit. Which is that one. I think we're set to 20 because that's what the sprockets were, and haven't altered it. Yeah, that looks fine. So we'll start with this one. Just do them tight for a start, and then we'll reach the final torque in a minute when we've been round them all. So the manual doesn't specify an order for these, but it's common practice just to make sure you do the opposites, just so nothing gets warped. So let's go for the actual torque setting now. Go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Double check those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So happy with those. They're all Loctited in. They're not going anywhere. All set to the correct torque. And that is basically our rear wheel pretty much finished. Cush rubbers are back in. And there's our socket assembly. Bear me a second. That just slots into there. And that is our rear wheel finished. So one final part for today. I did mention earlier that the tank and the plastics and that were back from the painters, and I've just brought them in here into a room we don't use very much, just so they don't get damaged out in the garage until I'm ready for them. So I'll show you what we've got. This is not easy with one hand. I should have brought the camera stand in really. So these have all been done by Dream Machine in Derby. I wasn't sure where else to take them, to be honest. I know lots of people say Dream Machine do a very good job, and I have to say I'm very impressed with what they've done. The colour is exactly as it should be. They've faithfully reproduced the decals as well, and they've varnished over those. So the tailpiece, for instance, where you can hopefully you can see the shine on that, the lights and the windows in the reflection. They've managed to capture the super single decals on there as well, which is great. They've left the rubber sections, rubber pieces on, which is useful because it means I don't have to source those. There should be a piece of rubber, or rubber that just goes around that section, but I'm sure I can find one of those or something similar to that from somewhere. The mud guard, because the fork brace is basically riveted on, I didn't want to take that off, so I asked them to mask that, which they've done, and they've done a fantastic job of that. They've even actually polished the fork brace for me, which is nice. Now this had holes drilled in it here and here, and for some reason the other end, I can understand one end because I think there must have been some kind of extension, like a flap, like a mud flap on there, but for some reason on the other side it was on both ends. I don't know why, maybe they turned it around at some point. Not sure, but anyway, so they've been filled. It doesn't really matter what it looks like on the back, but as you can see, the fork brace itself is riveted on, so I didn't really want to touch that. And then the tank, equally as good a job on that. This had several quite large dents and creases in it. There was one all the way along here. There was a big crease up here as well, and I've looked at this in various lights and I can't see where any of those dents or marks or scratches or creases were anymore. Apparently they don't fill the dents and the creases. They do try and knock them out, and apparently they did manage to knock all of these ones out, which has got to be a better option than putting a load of filler in. They've made a nice job of finishing off inside here as well, so I'm really pleased with that. They've done the underneath as well. They haven't just done the top, so that's really great. This section here was like this when I bought the bike. I'm assuming this isn't factory, looking at the state of the welding. Why that is there, I don't know. They've obviously cut it out for some reason at some point. But this tank inside was very rusty. I did de-rust it. Actually, it had sealer in it, a failed sealer, which I took out, managed to get out with frost tank sealer remover. It took a long time, but it did come out eventually. I'll perhaps talk about that process in another video. This here is not standard. Basically, it's a drain tap that's been welded into the tank, and it's the problem with these tanks is when it's on the bike, where that drain tap is the lowest point of the tank. But if you just tried to drain this out using the from the fuel tap rather there, you won't get all the petrol that's sitting in this part of the tank. So that's been put there. Apparently it's quite a relatively common thing on SRXs for people to do something like this. And this has got a little tap on the end of it, and then you can literally drain every last drop out if you want. When it's on the bike, you can't see that. It's out of sight, hidden by the frame. So I thought I'd leave that as it was. But yeah, it's I know this tank doesn't leak because for weeks it was full of electrolyte solution as I was doing the electrolysis process to clean all the rust out. So I'm confident that there are no leaks or pinholes in it. So I'm not intending to reseal it. It seems pointless to me to seal a tank just because it's rusty inside, when what you should be doing is getting the rust out of it, really, rather than trying to cover up the rust. So this has been completely de-rusted. It wasn't leaking, so I've left it as that. If once I'd got the sealer out, the failed sealer out, I found pinholes in the tank, or it was leaking underneath somewhere, then yes, I would have probably gone down the route of resealing it. But there's little point in sealing a tank if it's not actually leaking. If it's only rusty, just clean out the rust, fill it up with fresh fuel, off you go. So that's the tank and the plastics back. Oh, I do have the original decals which go on here. There's the round tuning fork, 3 tuning fork logo, and then there's a Yamaha badge which goes underneath it. They did manage to get those off and save those. They're going to have to be the subject of a restoration as well, because the tuning fork ones are okay, but the Yamaha ones have got like a chrome finish on, and that's that's come off, but I think I found a way to actually reproduce the chrome on those. But that's for another video. So that's everything for this video. So good parts, bad parts. Real shame about what they did with the VIN plate on the frame, but you know, we'll have a look and see if we can sort that out. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.